What's up guys, Max here, and as you can see today we've got something a little different. This is a Raptor 660 race quad, and I actually have all the pieces there out of the camera. It's actually totally complete, it's just been sitting for a few years. So hopefully this will be a pretty standard clean out the carbs, new air filter, oil change type job. But I have never, the last time I rode a quad was probably 5 or 6 years ago, and I've never owned one. And it's cool because they got the thumb throttle, and they got like a parking brake, and they got all kinds of weird, crazy stuff that motorcycles don't get. But I got it for real cheap, and it's got the 5-valve 660 engine in it, and it's got a clean title and everything. So I can't wait to to get it running. So we're gonna start with the basic stuff. I got a new battery already in for it. I ordered a new ignition because the guy had the title, but he lost the key somewhere. So we're gonna empty the gas tank, we're gonna take off the carburetors, we're gonna clean them out. So this is a single cylinder with a dual carburetor on it. So that should be interesting. And so, just the regular stuff, we're gonna get it going, and then we're definitely gonna take this out to Hidden Falls or something like that and give it a spin out there. So sticking a fresh battery in it, we have, at least crank. The trail tech still won't come on, which leads me to believe that this power wire is broken somewhere. So we're going to put a fresh battery in the trail tech out of one of the other bikes real quick. But yeah, other than that, so it looks like even though the ignition is gone, I basically just jumpered it with a little jumper wire, and so that seems to work at least enough to crank. I don't know if it's actually getting ignition or not. But I need to take off the gas tank and drain it and take care of all the other little things before we get to that. But yeah, altogether it cranks and it sounds pretty healthy, so that's a good start. Well, with a fresh battery in it, it looks like it's getting, looks like a total of about 555 miles on this thing since the trail tech was installed. So that's cool, so we know this works, so we can just get a new battery for it and proceed to working on the rest of the bike. So the next thing is this air filter. It's got a K&N unit in it, which is nice, but it's super duper dirty, which is not nice. So we're going to use our K&N air filter cleaner kit to clean this thing up. Well, it looks like somebody was good enough to drain the gas tank before letting this thing sit. The other thing is, this is gritty as shit, so we're going to have to rebuild the petcock for sure. So with the gas tank out of the way, here's kind of a better view. You got your spark plug back there, you got your oil sump up over there. This right here is, I assume, for adjusting valve clearances. These are our carburetors. We're going to have to remove these back hoses that connect the airbox and probably just pull the whole airbox assembly out with them. Might be easier, I don't know. So we're going to play around with that. This, I assume, is the fuel line, so we're just going to tuck this up out of the way. Or no, I guess this is the... Whoa, never heard it crunch. That was the fuel line. That was totally just fell right apart. This must be the overflow. Yeah, this is the overflow line. That's the fuel line. We're going to have to replace all that, obviously. And these are our carburetors, and we're going to get them out of there and onto the workbench so that we can get them nice and clean. So there are 3mm hexes, 1, 2, 3, 4, and once you lift these out of the way, the carbs just pop right out. This up here is the choke, and hopefully we should be able to undo it by taking off this 12mm bolt. And then here's the throttle cover, and I'm hoping that when we take this off, we'll be able to basically just unhook the throttle and pull the carburetors out of there and get them clean. So the way the throttle works is there's a little holder piece that goes on here, kind of like an old school carb slide. That's what sits in here. And then this brass piece comes off, and you basically just take a 8mm open box wrench type thing and unscrew this. So now our carbs are totally disconnected. We can pull them out and clean them. Definitely going to use some PB Blaster before we even try to attack these things. So here are our carbs. First thing I took off were the drain lines, and they're also super brittle. They go right here. They're not really important for anything other than draining gas properly. I've never used a drain line in my life. I always end up just pulling the carbs out. But we will replace them. I just got to find some, I guess, 1/8 inch line or something like that goes on here. Now I hit everything with PP Blaster. I'm going to let it sit for a minute. Our fuel adjustment screws are right here. I'm going to figure out how many turns out they are, and I'm going to write that down, and I'll check that against the factory manual. And then we'll remove these bowls. Unfortunately, it appears somebody stripped some of these screws, so we'll probably have to make a trip to Home Depot or whatever to get new bolts and stuff like that if I can't find them in my bolt collection. But hopefully getting to this point hasn't been too bad at all, so hopefully this won't be too bad either. So there we go. Pretty much all of the screws are stripped, so I have to keep using the pliers trick. And this is the gasket. This is, I mean, it's just totally solid. There it is. I mean, it's just cracking. A lot of times I can cheat and just reuse old gaskets, but in this case I'm going to have to order carb rebuild kits. There's a little green residue that's usually caused by ethanol. But we'll get all this soaked and cleaned out long before the carb kits come in. And this is why it's important. I'm writing down all of the values and stuff so I can always put these back together when the carb kits come in and put them together correctly. So there is a difference between these two carbs. This one's got an extra fuel jet of some sort. That's a 55. Also, the main jet over here is a 140, probably to compensate. And the main jet over here is a 145. Unfortunately, these carbs are in such bad shape that all I can do is just set them aside for now until the rebuild kits come in. There's not really a whole lot I can do, and it doesn't really make sense to take them apart and clean them now, because that's how parts get lost. But other than that, it's not too bad. We'll wait for all the various stuff to come in, then we'll start rebuilding it and put it back together. I wouldn't be surprised if this bike just fired right up once we got everything clean and sorted out. So our Petcock rebuild kit came in, K&L genuine, made in Japan. These you can get these on eBay. You can get them on Amazon. They are my go-to kit. Moose Racing's okay, but I prefer these when I can get them. All the Petcock kit rebuild kits are pretty generic. You have the smiley face gasket, the little O-ring, new big bolts that hold it to the tank, new little bolts that hold the faceplate on, and one new Petcock 2 tank gasket. So one of the first things I do is I clean up the tank. And the reason you want to do this is you don't want to go through all this trouble only to find out there's a big crack in this somewhere. Thankfully on this one there's not, so we can just move forward. The first thing I do is, while it's still attached to the tank, I go ahead and remove these little screws right here. And we have new screws in the kit, so we can actually just dispose of these all together. You know, if yours are stripped or whatever, you can always drill them out. You remove the faceplate. Basically, this whole piece just comes out. And then you can remove the faceplate if you want. Don't forget there's a little metal compression ring under here, so you don't want to lose that. Here is our O-ring. That's where that sits, so we can set the O-ring aside. There inside is our little smiley face gasket. And it is removed by just using a little pick. You can see there's a lot of dust in there. And then finally, we can remove these larger bolts that hold this on to the gas tank. I don't know why I decided that I wanted to do this with it still on the gas tank. That was kind of a dumb idea. But basically, you just unscrew all these. And when it comes out, there you go. There's your two filters, your regular use and then your reserve. Here you just want to pull these bolts out again and just set them aside. And once again we have our little gasket in here, and then you just want to use a pick or something to get it out. Anyway, I'm going to jump the camera for a second and get a new screwdriver. Basically we're going to clean all these parts and then just reassemble them with the new stuff. So when you're ready for reassembly, you can see why I call it the smiley face gasket. It's kind of a scared face gasket, really. But the first thing after you clean it out, you just set that gasket down in there, nice and tight. You take your O-ring, you drop it on the floor, at least once, And then the O-ring simply fits on the outside of this piece right here. And you can see there's the channel. And so basically whenever it connects the inflow to the outflow, that's how you end up getting gas. So at this point you just want to gently rotate this guy in. Right now it'll rotate 360 degrees, but this faceplate is actually what's designed to keep it from doing that normally. It's kind of a pain in the butt to put back on here. But you can see there's a little tooth right there, and that basically prevents you from just going all willy-nilly with it. So there we go. Just set that in there. And then set this right here. And then we have our new screws we can use to tighten it down. And then we'll put this gasket goes up here like this. And then you just bolt it back on to the gas tank. Not exactly rocket science, but I just wanted you guys to be able to see that. So the next thing we want to do while I got all the carbs and stuff out and the engine's cold is we want to set the valve adjustment. This is a 5-valve head, and when the gas tank is off, it's super easy to get to these intake valves right here. And the way this rocker arm system works is you have a lock nut, and then you have basically a little screw on top of here. And what you do is you loosen the lock nut, it's probably a number 10 or so, and then you can adjust up and down. And on this bike, the intake valves need to be between 0.1 millimeter and 0.15 millimeter. And what you want to use is you want to use one of these feeler gauge kits like this. And I always like my valves a little tighter, so I'm going to go and set it for 0.10 millimeters or 0.004 inches clearance on these valves. So the way you want it is you want this to be kind of catchy, but still tight. And I don't like this system as much as the KTM's. The KTM's have they have a little cutout right here for a flathead. The Yamaha doesn't. See, now that I've tightened it with the wrench, it's much too tight because you can't move. And then it's like you basically gotta go back and forth with it until it can move smoothly with just a little bit of resistance. So basically I'm going to go through and do all of these valves. I need both of my hands to do it, but it's pretty straightforward and pretty self-explanatory. The next part of the process is these caps down here. You can see them from up here. So these are 17 millimeter caps, and their only purpose is to cover up the valves. So you just remove them, and then if I bring you down there to take a look inside, you should be able to see the valves in there. And we're going to adjust them the exact same way, but these are 0.15 millimeter setting for cold. The other thing that we're ready to replace is this is our new ignition with a key. It's just a stock unit I got off eBay. This is our old one. The only difference is this one doesn't have a key in it because I got this without a key. So all we had to do was unplug this one plug. This ignition is really basic. It just jumpers the connection or unjumpers it. That's it. So now what we got to do is you got to get this plastic piece right here off. It's just a plastic nut. You can see it right there. And then once you get that plastic nut off, you just put the new one in and screw it down tight. All right, the next order of business is to rebuild these carburetors. And so what we have here is we have a Shindy carb kit, and we're going to try to replace as much as we can. But I always take my time, and I'm always very careful in this because a lot of times these aftermarket parts, I mean, this says made in Japan, and normally that's okay, but sometimes these are not as good as the original bronze pieces. So sometimes it's worth the time to clean them out instead. So we're going to cut this open and basically lay it out here and try to get some organization going so we don't lose anything. We're basically just going to lay this out here and to make sure that we got everything, we know where it's going. So here's our complete kit. You got your 2 O-ring gaskets, 2 fuel petcocks. These are your fuel screw adjustments. These are the clips and stuff that go with the fuel screw adjustment and the clip for the needles. You got your needles. This is that extra fuel jet. These are air jets. These are holders. These are pilot jets, main jet holders. And this is some sort of adjustment screw. There's a large spring that probably goes with that. There's 2 small washers, 2 small plastic washers, and 2, 4, 6, 7 little O-rings. And those O-rings at least definitely go here. They probably go somewhere on top. So in this case, we're actually going to start from the top because it's easier to get the needle done and then move on down here to all the complicated stuff. So here's this. Basically, once you remove the 2 screws, cap comes off, spring comes off. This is in really good shape. Out of here, oops. Basically down in that void there's this little guy, and it just clicks in, so you just need some needle nose pliers to get it out. This is our needle, and there you can see the construction. We got a washer, plastic washer, metal washer, and then this lock ring right here. So these basically can't be adjusted. So these are the needles we're going to be replacing. Here's one of those black O-rings we have in our kit. So let's get to that. So I misspoke earlier. This top part is just a little cap. Then it goes this, and it goes into the second groove. Then you have your plastic washer, then you have your metal washer. And here we have the new and the old. And basically the eyeball test says that they're basically the same thing. The number on this is a Y259. That's the new one. And the old one says 5ND16-56, but based on the visual test you can see that these are basically the same thing. So we're going to swap the new one in and all new hardware. So there's our reassembled needle, and we're just going to go ahead and basically fit it right back in here. I like to do the carbs one at a time, so I'm actually just going to go ahead and refit this all back on here real quick, so that I don't get new parts, used parts and whatnot mixed up and stuff gets stuck in the wrong carburetor. Now I'm moving systematically from top to bottom. So we've done this whole top part of the carb, and you can see the gold shiny needles down here. You can see these slide a lot better. In the past they were stuck because these needles weren't heard. The next is these air valves. The new ones, let's see, both the new ones, this is a 150 and this is an 80. Yeah, so these are definitely different. So we need to make sure we put the right one into the right carburetor. So what we're going to do is we're going to take out this one right here first, and see which one it is. So this is 150. So the one that's furthest from the throttle has a larger air jet. So this one, and if you're keeping track at home, this is the one that doesn't have the extra fuel jet. Because in the manual they're referred to as carbs 1 and 2, and I don't have any idea, there's no reference point as to which carb is carb 1 and which one is carb 2. So we're just basically putting in new components that match up with what we already have. And this one is in fact an 80. So we're going to drop that brand new guy in there. And just tighten it down. So that's all the external stuff. Now we can move to the underside of the carburetor, which is, you know, everybody's favorite thing. So I like to start with the pilot jets, which are these long ones right here, because they're actually the same in both carb, and they're the easiest to get to because they're right there out on their own. So sorry if my hand is blocking that, but these guys right here, these long ones, these are pilot jets. And one is a 22.5 and the other one is a 22.5 as well. And both of our new ones are also 22.5s. So we're just going to drop those down into their little holes, and I'm going to screw them in here real quick. And when you're doing this, you don't want them to be like, because remember, you're putting bronze into aluminum, cast aluminum, So you don't need to go all torque crazy, excuse me. They just need to be snug, where they're not going to back out under vibration. So the next one we're going to replace is this extra fueling screw, and to be totally honest with you guys, I don't actually know what its name is or what its extra function is, but it is a 55, it looks like. I'm sorry, it's a 95, and the new one is a 95 as well, and the new one will just thread right in where that old one was. And as you can see, this side is untapped. So like I said, I'm not entirely sure how this dual carb system uses that, but it's not a big deal. That's the other thing. A lot of people get worried about carbs, like, oh my god, I don't know how to do all this, I don't know how to do all that. I mean, I know quite a bit mechanically, but I'm not some sort of carb master, and you don't need to be to rebuild carbs. You literally just have to be able to put stuff back in the same place you got it from. So now we're doing the farther carb that's out here. So that's the main jet. This is the main jet holder, and you can see there's one of our O-rings. So these main jet holders are exactly the same on both sides, as you can see, 3 little holes. So we're going to install that first, and there's one of our brand new O-rings, and we're just going to slip it over the needle and pull it tight. And this is going to be, I believe, an 8mm. This is an 8mm, and again, you don't want to torque the crap out of it, especially with a wrench. You just want to get it nice and snug where that O-ring is nicely seated in there. Now, this has a special cap, and then the main jet, and this, like I said, this is the farthest from the throttle, and this is the 145 main jet. So there's our 145 main jet, and you don't get a new one of these because it's just probably just for fuel guidance. And ours is pretty clean anyway, so there goes our 145. So now we're going to do the other side here real quick. This is the one that's closest to the throttle. And this main jet is going to be a 140 instead of a 145. And there it is, a 140. And now we're going to remove this old one right here. And again, you don't want to forget your O-ring here. Roll that up on there. Drop that in. And screw it down. There we go. There's our cap back on there. There's our new 140 main jet. And just like that, we've rebuilt the main part of the carbs. The next part is right here. It involves removing the stop screw. Allow us to pull. So this is one of the downsides because these so we're actually gonna have to flex. So if I turn this to the camera, you can see that this is actually held on right here, and we're actually gonna have to flex this out of here without breaking it, like that. So this is our flow bowl, which is fine. We just set that aside. I'm sorry, that's our float. We just set it aside. Now there's another set screw. See if we can get all of that dissolved. But so you're gonna remove this, and that's gonna let you get this guy out, and then you can replace it with the new one. This is where gasoline comes into the carburetor. So it's important that this moves up and down smoothly. Otherwise, you can rebuild the carburetor to your heart's content, but if there's no gas getting into it, you're not going to have a running vehicle. So it's all about having the right tools, and sometimes having the right screwdriver bit is all you need to get something like that out. But this part just came out with a pair of pliers afterwards. I'm going to clean out this inside area and blow it out with compressed air, just to make sure none of that gunk ends up back in my carburetor. But other than that, we can put the new unit in and then come over and do the other side. Just to show how badly gummed up that was, that unit I set aside, you can't even tell that it's actually 2 pieces, but it is. This is the main holder that it sits in. Then this is the actual fuel valve that basically opens and closes and allows fuel to come in. So what you want to do is you want to seat this right here, and basically just press it down firmly with your finger. That's usually enough. And then you just get this bolt, I mean, I'm going to move it away from the camera here, but get this bolt basically started, and then it'll actually pull it into place. There we go. Or you can basically just take the back side of something soft, or like a gentle hammer or a socket or something, and basically just push it down into place and then tighten it up. Basically, you just don't want gas flowing around it. But like I said, there's an O-ring on it, so it's usually not too big of a deal as long as you can get it off. And now what you want to do is you want to take this and you want to seat it back on here like that, where it swings forward. And then when you install it, you just install it down in there. Get that centered. Grab your set screw, put it in there, and then basically just tighten down this set screw. And other than our bowl gasket, we're done for this carburetor. So now I'm basically just going to do the same procedure over here. Oh, I'm sorry, we're not done. We're going to do the same procedure over here, and then we're going to move to our fuel-air ratio control screws. Now the next piece of the puzzle is this. This is our fuel adjustment screw, and if you remember back the first time when I just took them out, I counted how many turns they were screwed in so that we can reset that back to where it's supposed to be. So basically you just screw them out and you get this sort of looking thing, and basically just a little lever. And inside of there's going to be a small black O-ring, and there's going to be a small washer. Now it goes when you, and there's a spring. So it goes spring, washer, O-ring, if I remember correctly. So there's our springs. Just came out. Now the it goes spring, washer, then O-ring. Unfortunately, the washer and the O-ring, if they don't immediately come out on their own, they're probably going to be a huge pain in the butt to fish out, and you just have to kind of try not to damage anything and basically do that sort of number. And then, so we got 2 washers and 1 O-ring, and let's see if we can get that other O-ring out of there. There we go. So there you can see that there's 2 washers, 2 O-rings, and springs and stuff. So now what we're going to do is we're going to basically reassemble the new units and screw them in. So these are actually supposed to be backed out 2 1/4 turns. So the way I do it is by halves. So I watch the screwdriver. There's half, there's 1, there's 1 1/2, there's 2, and there's 2 1/4. Now all we have left is you basically take your little float bowl O-ring gasket, you just seat it in place, and this can require a little bit of juggling, but basically just seat it in place, and then you I usually like to set the carburetor down on it so that it's not going to go anywhere. And the other thing I did, if you guys remember, we had a horrible time getting those bolts out. What I did was I went to Lowe's and I bought some of these. These are hex head. They're going to be M4 by 0.7 by 12. Excuse me. And they're going to be hex head, so we can put them on and take them off a lot easier. In general, whenever it comes to carburetors and I end up having to replace bolts, I always replace them with hex head or Allen key bolts, whatever term you prefer to use, because it makes it a lot easier taking them apart, putting them back together all the time. Now, the final part of this kit, I figured out what this giant ass thing is for. It goes right here, it replaces our throttle stop set. And I kind of like the stock design. It's in good shape. So I'm actually going to leave the stock unit on there. I'm not going to replace it because I prefer the larger ridges for my hands. But I got to say, this Shindy product, I've never used this brand before. I bought this on eBay and without knowing what brand it was. But I have to say, this is a really quality piece. If you have the choice between this and let's say like Moose Racing or something, get this. This is infinitely higher quality than that. And so what we can do is, this is our overflow hose. We can put our overflow hose back on, maybe. This is really soft. Anyway, we can put our overflow hose back on. I bought some 5/16 fuel line for our actual fuel line over here, so we can hook up the gas tank here in a minute. And so now I got to worry about getting all this back on the quad and getting it all hooked up. So I'm not a Yamaha fanboy by any means. I mean, they're one of my preferred brands, but I'm not a fanboy. But shit like this pisses me off. This is a $25 light bulb, which is only used in select Yamaha ATVs and totally unavailable for sale anywhere else. Even on Amazon, Ron Ayers, whatever, dealer, 25 bucks, right there. Shit like this makes me angry. So this is the battery you would find in a regular sports bike. This is the beast that goes in this. This is a battery that you find in like Harleys and really, really heavy duty applications. But I decided to spring for it because this battery is about 25 bucks on eBay. This battery is about $50, but I decided to spring for it because there's a reason that it has no Kickstarter and it's such a big single. I went ahead and got the battery, so we got it all charged up, so we're going to swap it in next. The other thing I bought is I spent 10 bucks on new grips because the old ones were melted. So grips are pretty straightforward to put on. You basically just cut them out of the box and slide them on. You really should use, oh, or maybe not, you just open the box instead of being a fucking heathen. Anyway, I just usually just force them on, and usually the Texas Sun takes care of the glue part for me. But if you want, you can put a little glue inside of there. They sell a special product. You can use wire to wrap it up tight right around the edges here. There's a little groove right there for wire. I might do that. Normally, I haven't had a big issue with grip slipping, so I just stick them on. So our battery's secured over here. We got the carbs in over here. This is our fuel line. We're going to obviously trim it down when we get the fuel tank on it. But we got our ignition working. So next step is to put the air filter back. Now I've already cleaned this and oiled it. So you got this ridge down here. And I guess that just sits right in that cutout right there. And then there is a piece like this that sits like this. And it's just held on by these little clamps. But what you do want to remember is that there's actually an extra vacuum hose back over here. And I'll bring you guys around here in a second, but I'll just show it to you in a minute. So there's the line I was talking about right down here. That's the PCV rebreather. So now we got this on here tightly. All that's left now is to reinstall the gas tank and the rest of the body work, put some gas in it, and I'm gonna hope that it starts. Alright, so here it is. I just took this around the block and it terrified the shit out of me because either some of these brakes need to be really bled or basically just flushed through, which is probably true, but this thing is scary. You like hit the throttle and then it, anyway. There we go. It fires right up. The other thing I don't understand how it works is this parking brake mechanism. It clearly can't move because of this, but I don't understand how it was supposed to function in the first place. Because there is a parking brake down there. But anyway, so kind of our next steps here, I'm going to do the usual MaksWerks thing. I'm going to bleed all the brakes, change the oil, and so on and so forth. But I don't really need to show you guys that. There's nothing really special about this engine. You just take up the skid plate and take care of it. You guys have seen me do it a whole bunch of times. So there is our $25 light bulb at work. And this thing actually looks really, really cool. I can't wait to get it all done so that I can take it for a real test spin for you guys. pretty much it. Just a few little I's and T's, and I'm still waiting on the title. So, not a big deal, but this thing is a hell of a lot of fun.